Well, all along, I've been skeptical of this whole thing.
Friday Scoop with FT Senior Insider Ken Rosenthal. Ken, first off, I don't know if you caught any Yankee games this week, but they sounded different.
They did?
Todd
Oh, I know. I
on the
did
call.
catch. Yes, I did catch the
Wow,
Yankee
Ken,
games.
wow,
I'm just
really?
happy. Hey, I'm just happy Todd's still joining us.
Yes.
Because,
Thank
he's
you.
now a Yankee announcer.
Wow, good point,
Big
Ken. Good
deal.
point.
People tweeting at him how great he is.
You saw that. I started off the
Well,
show saying we have royalty on the show now.
I was waiting for a Ken tweet something nice so I can get some more followers, but I didn't see it. That's okay.
Well, here it is in person. So I mentioned this also because I want to start with the Yankees. So I know you covered this a little bit on Fair Territory. I believe he was a dork was he your dork, Hal Steinbrenner, this week? He was, right?
He was, yes.
Okay, so here's my hook, okay? I know that he's coming out and talking about how the Yankees payroll, might have issues in the future. The key part for me was what he said at the end of his sentence, where he said, if we have to pay luxury tax numbers like this, because I don't think an owner has to come out and try and posture for a Juan Soto contract. Like, that's not going to work publicly. Who cares, right? For me, I think it's an owner taking the best shot that he can at some of his other colleagues, because you can't really do that, and saying, it sucks that I have to give so much of my money to other teams that don't even use some of that money. What did you take from it?
I didn't take that, Scott, but that's a pretty interesting interpretation of it. And certainly the Yankees do not like the way they are taxed, the way the money is distributed necessarily. All big market teams would prefer the luxury tax would be less or would just go away entirely, right? That's in their interests. That wasn't my takeaway. My takeaway was more along the lines of an owner essentially crying poor who has the richest team. And that's a hard swallow for a lot of people, for fans, for media, for small market teams, fans of those teams. And yet at the same time, Chris Kirshner of The Athletic today wrote a really interesting article about how they can still do Soto and they can still maybe even re-sign Clay Holmes and get to a payroll place where Hal wants to be, because they do have some expiring contracts. So guys who are going to become free agents. Alex Verdugo, for instance. You don't necessarily have to bring him back. You've got Jason Dominguez coming. So they can make some decisions along those lines. And I understand what Hal Steinbrenner is saying. You don't want the payroll in his mind to be 350 or 400. But for the Yankees to say they can't sustain it, what I said on the show yesterday was, open your books, prove you can't sustain it, because I don't believe that for a second.
I couldn't agree more with Scott. I think, and because I've heard how much he doesn't like giving the other teams. He doesn't mind going over. It's like a guy that's like, I don't mind giving a good tip at a restaurant as long as the person I'm giving a good tip to is actually going to use the money for something good. But do you see a system for the Yankees that will not revolve around like how they're going to use their money and being like the essentially funding the Pirates, funding the teams that aren't paying, that they could switch to? Because salary cap will never happen. This is essentially being used as a salary cap. Do you see that as something that, hey, you know what, if we do this, then we don't have to give our money to those lower teams? Or is that something that's just going to continue to increase and it's going to continue to make the Yankees not want to spend?
Eric, I'll tell you what I see. I see in the next round of labor negotiations yet another issue, not just between players and owners, but between owners and owners. And this is what you guys are driving at. High revenue teams, low revenue teams, their interests are not nearly the same in many cases. And if you guys recall, and I guess probably you're too young to recall, but the 94-95 strike was driven by this entire issue, big market, small market. And it was a huge problem for the sport at the time. It's a huge problem again. And I don't know the solution. And this is perhaps Commissioner Rob Manfred's greatest challenge as owner, keeping this group together, because they do have different goals and different needs as owners. The Cleveland Guardians versus the New York Yankees, we're almost talking about two different worlds, right? So there is, I imagine, certain resentment among the big market owners. In fact, I don't have to imagine it. I know it. There is a resentment that exists. And there is also a feeling among small market owners and executives that this system does not work for us. It's not fair. We cannot compete. The results on the field don't necessarily indicate that always, but it is a greater challenge for those teams, certainly, than it is for teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers.
Yeah, I want to ask one more along the Yankees real quick. Luis Gil has been a godsend for this team. Nobody knew out of spring training what they were going to get. They knew he threw hard. They knew he had good off-speed pitches as well. Garrett Cole's on his way back, whether it's 3 weeks, a month. I don't know the timeline. When asked Aaron Boone the other day, he says, haven't really thought about it. Now, could you see them going to a 6-man rotation? Or do you see, baseball always plays out the way it is? Like, what do you see happening there with the Yankees as Garrett Cole's timeline gets a little closer coming back?
I see this essentially working out in some fashion, and maybe somebody else gets hurt, maybe everyone's healthy, and they decide, let's save some innings with Luis Gil, who, remember, only in his first full season coming off of Tommy John surgery. So it's not like he's going to throw 180 innings this season. They're going to need to back off at some point, and Cole's return will give them the opportunity to do that. The goal will be, in my opinion, to have Luis Gil, this version of him, in some fashion in October. They want him in October being a weapon of some kind, whether it's in the rotation or perhaps as a long man, some kind of other bullpen role. You want all of these guys upright for the most important time of the year, and that is what they will do. They will try to arrange this however they can to make sure that they have the majority of their pitchers in as good form as possible come the postseason.
Actually, on that note, this show, Foul Territory, is hosted by all former major leaguers plus me just trying to keep up with these guys, right? So we are into daily health, energy, gut health, the whole deal. Pretty obvious. So we want to talk about AG1. I first gave AG1 a try because a friend recommended it to me a while back, and it's helped me on many levels. Focus, stress, gut health, big one for me. I'm also allergic to gluten and dairy, and this covers both categories there. So make sure you take ownership of your health by visiting drinkag1.com/foul. But I'm not the only one, because this on the desk here right now, and I've been on the road a lot, so I've got my travel packets. Mr. Kratz is drinking AG1 as well.
Dude, the travel packets are a game changer. Just this weekend, we took it to Kansas City. You're in a hotel. They're not like all of it. Like, yes, you can find the juice places, but it's nothing like what's in these packs.
Mm-hmm.
For me, like just the energy that I have, and I just feel more alert because I don't drink energy drinks.
Yep.
And it's great. It is awesome. Obviously at home it's awesome, but the travel packs are the real G.
Listen, I know I'm 37. I know I look great, but I'm looking out. I'm checking the mail for my packets. I'm checking the mail for my packets, Crassy.
This is what happens. You recommend to a family or a friend. So we got you then, okay? So you replace your multivitamin just with AG1. You don't need, to fill up your shelf. Just it's one packet, or obviously you have the tub and one scoop, which includes prebiotics, probiotics, digestive enzymes for gut support. And yes, you can recommend it to friends, formulated based on the latest science and maintains high quality standards if you're of age. It's kind of one size fits all, which is great. So it's a foundational nutritional supplement that supports your body's universal needs like gut optimization, stress management, and immune support. Since 2010, AG1 has led the future of foundational nutrition, continuously refining their formula to create a smarter, better way to elevate your baseline health. And if there's one product we would recommend to elevate your health, it is AG1. So we're excited to welcome them as a new partner to the FT fam. So if you want to take ownership of your health, it starts with AG1. Try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D3K2 and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase at drinkag1.com/foul, F-O-U-L. That's drinkag1.com/foul. Go check it out.
In the notebook yesterday, as you wrote in the windup, you talk about veteran influence. that's near and dear to my heart because, and Eric's, we were both, veteran baseball players. We both understood the presence of veteran baseball players, how much they're needed. And it kind of seems like that's kind of fizzling out, or is fizzling out a little bit with the trade deadline looming. Talk a little bit about, who can be those veteran guys and what you think about, having those veteran presences, if that is even presences in a word, along with the team moving on into the playoffs.
Well, the point of what I wrote, Todd, it was about the Royals. That we know what Seth Lugo's numbers are. We know what Michael Wacha's numbers are. They've both performed well. Lugo leads the American League in ERA. He's performed really well. But there is a value to guys like this that transcends what they do on the field. It goes beyond what they do on the field. And I talked to Brady Singer about this. He, of course, is a younger member of the Royals rotation. And he said, yeah, these guys, just watching them, you learn a lot of different things, how to study hitters, how to attack hitters, how to go deeper into games. And in preparing for our broadcast tomorrow, it's Dodgers Reds, I was asking the Reds GM Nick Kroll about Hunter Green. And he said, I believe that Frankie Montas, even in his brief time here, has been a good influence on Hunter Green. So this value that we're talking about, Todd, there's no question in my mind, having covered the sport, and I know you guys feel this way too, that even though you cannot measure it, it's there, it matters, it is meaningful, and while it doesn't necessarily translate to very specific things on the field, there is something going on there. Now, you ask about the deadline and which guys might provide that. Off the top of my head, I know I've talked about this guy a lot, Tommy Pham. He did that for the Mets last year. Kevin Pillar, maybe not at his peak in his performance, but at the same time, he's that kind of guy. Those aren't necessarily frontline players. Those are complementary players, so it's maybe not the same. But that presence we speak of, it has gotten diminished over the years in the club's evaluations of players, and it should not be. Simple as that.
Ken, if you want to ever stop writing and you could come up with a formula to value veteran leadership and who has the most value to veteran leadership, you could sell that to all 30 teams and you could just go off on your yacht and soak up the rays. So,
well, I think I'll stick to the day job, Eric, because I have not figured that out. But I can write about it, and hopefully that has some meaning in some fashion.
Speaking of writing about it and speaking of trips, are you scheduling a trip to Las Vegas for Evan Drellick, talking about how the stadium in Vegas has to break ground maybe April?
Well, all along, I've been skeptical of this whole thing. And observers of the Oakland A's and their ownership over the years and their efforts to get stadiums built are skeptical because until the shovel is in the ground, until we're going here, 2028 is a great idea. It's a goal. It's not reality. So we shall see how this all goes down. And again, it's all systems go from everything we're told. The commissioner certainly has not indicated anything otherwise. The owners have approved this. Everything's going forward. I know there are some lawsuits pending and those kinds of things, but we'll see if this thing gets built by 2028. That's going to be really interesting.
Well, I want to back it up. I want to back it up a little bit to now, because Evan also talked about how in Sacramento, Rob Manfred said that in Sacramento, they are doing some renovations to the visiting clubhouse. They're building a building. Do you know, and this is just a personal thing, do you know who's paying for this? Because why is Rob Manfred coming out and saying this? Is MLB paying for these renovations to get them up to specs to the Players Association, or is Fisher actually paying for these renovations?
I don't have an exact answer for that. I probably should know that. But I would imagine it's either Fisher or a combination of Fisher and MLB. Who else would pay for it?
And so that would be my question. Why is the MLB stepping in?
Or maybe Sacramento might be contributing as well, but I don't know the answer to this. I should.
Okay, that's fine. It was something I wanted to. I figured if somebody would know, it would be you, Ken. But that's okay. I'm glad you were honest.
Well, bring me in for a sec here, okay? Because when something like this is going on, here's been one of my main problems. I was on a pretty popular podcast, Ricky Henderson podcast, yesterday while that Oakland A's game was going on, which we covered at the top, which was fun, but. We did, of course, have to talk about the ugly stuff going on with the team. the fact that we don't know anything and the public doesn't know anything continues. Like, there are no updates. This is, if you're going off their rhetoric, this is supposed to be fun and exciting times, right? We're bringing baseball to Vegas. Nobody knows anything. We continue to get a lack of updates and just very weird public comments, right? I'm sure you feel the same way.
I will say this. It might be out there who's paying for this, and I simply did not read it or have not seen it. I don't know that this is a hidden ball kind of thing. I don't want to go there and say that. Now, in general, yes, there's not a lot that we know, or maybe there's more that we should know, but at the same time, I'm not going to condemn them for this. I don't know what's been said and not said with regard to this.
No, sorry, I misspoke. So I'm more talking about breaking ground. Like, you can't give us any updates, right? Like, hey, this is the plan. We're trying to break ground at this time. Like, you would think that you would get a timeline because it's an exciting time. And from what I remember from past either ballpark experiences, especially upgrades, like even in Miami, right? I was in Miami during that whole experience. They were constantly providing updates on what was going on. Yes. I mean, with local politicians, and then with breaking ground updates, like we had constant updates. And back then we were still using newspapers at times too, right? And I remember because I was finishing up school, and we were doing a course that was covering what was going on down there because there was a lot going on. And we've talked to David Sampson about it. But my point is, there were constant updates. And we constantly have no idea what's going on, and we're all still a little bit skeptical, and now even feel like maybe the team ends up staying in Sacramento, and the smart man who's friends with John Fisher and has a home next to him might be thinking that this is going to get botched again.
Well, maybe if you're the Oakland A's and you don't know exactly what's going on, you can't give those updates. And I think that's what you're driving at here. They're not entirely set on these different timelines. And for that reason, there's a bit of mystery to this whole thing. And again, it's the Oakland A's. There's a long history here of things not going the way they're supposed to go with regard to stadium construction. San Jose, Fremont, we can go right down the line. Oakland, all of these places that they supposedly were going to go and didn't go. This one is further down the line. There's no question about that. And at the same time, because it's Fisher and because it's the A's, I'm not sure you can entirely trust it.
Mm-hmm. All right, I got one fan question for you here, Ken. Kelsey said, would love to know what Ken thinks about how the balanced schedule is playing into the standings and the records and the first quarter narratives of teams, not as easy to predict how it will shake out come October. I would like to also just preface it and say I love the balanced schedule, which I said last year as well. I just think it provides more variety to our game.
Kelsey, I'm with Scott, first of all, on this. I like the balanced schedule. I like what it's done for the sport. I don't know that I can make any kind of accurate judgment on how it's playing into this. The one shocking scheduling thing of this season is that the Phillies have played, only 3 teams that are currently above 500 or were above 500 at the time they played them. That would lead you to believe that their record has been enhanced by a weaker schedule. At the same time, you've got to beat those teams. And I know with travel, there was some question early on. Will there be more travel for certain teams? And the way I understand it, there's more travel in certain years, less travel in other years for, say, a specific team like Seattle, okay? So that balances out. But as far as the impact on standings right now, I don't know that anyone could say, here's the answer. The one thing that has really changed, in my opinion, over the last few years is not necessarily related to the schedule, but the expanded postseason. That gives us an entirely different reference point when we talk about buyers and sellers and what might happen at the deadline. It seems to me that it's almost like even teams that have not played well, it's only late May, the expanded postseason exists, there's 3 wild cards, we do a little bit of the deadline, if we like our chances, we can do it. Diamondbacks were like that last year. So that's the biggest change for me, the biggest thing that's influenced club behavior.
Last one, Ken, and then we got the long weekend, and I want to remind everyone Ken's back on Tuesday for Fair Territory. We'll observe the Memorial Day on Monday. I know you talked about it a little bit in Fair Territory with Lana. We haven't covered this yet, so I just wanted to get your quick take, and then we'll get these guys to bounce their thoughts off of it. You had Michael Wilbon, who I like. I've followed him for years, a national writer and broadcaster on PTI, said that he hates exit velo and any numbers and all that. And I loved the reply from JJ Cooper, who was like, yeah, we should get rid of miles per hour for NASCAR too. Like, let's just get rid of everything. So what were your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I'm a Michael Wilbon fan too. I worked in Baltimore for many years. He was in Washington. He is an extremely good guy. He was good to me. But we've seen now twice ESPN commentators, both of whom are basically basketball centric, right? Michael Wilbon and Stephen A. Smith, venture into baseball without a lot of knowledge about baseball. Trout gets hurt too much, according to Stephen A. Smith, and now Michael's saying exit velo is ruining the sport for him, or ruining sports in general for him. This is why, in this day and age, it's probably better to focus on one specific sport the way I do than talk about things you don't have any knowledge of. And the exit velo debate is a legitimate one, and I understand the frustration of some fans who say, listen, it's not that important. Look at these guys like Stanton who hit the ball hard. He's having a good year this year, but he hasn't always been that way. You look at O'Neal Cruz, yeah, great. He's basically an above average offensive player, but not a great offensive player. Yes. My point on this was that performance Tuesday night, that was a great performance, and it was measurable. It was quantifiable. We came to have a better appreciation of it because we knew what the numbers were and we knew what the context of the numbers were. So I wish Michael hadn't said that because he got crushed for it. And Michael Wilbon is one of the most accomplished people in our business and one of the best people in our business. But we all say things that we don't always think entirely through, and I would think he would like this one back.
Yeah, I honestly think there's not much really to talk about in the NBA. I mean, it's so they try and figure out something else they can figure out. I mean, listen, it is what it is. People are going to have their opinions, and then we move on from there. I know you're in Cincinnati.
Todd, let's bring it up right now. This is the first game I believe I've done in Cincinnati, not including the All-Star game, since you crushed my finger. I think it was 2013. I think it was this pinky finger right here. Foul ball by Frazier. Now, admittedly, I had my head down. I was tweeting something at the time. It was about Terry Collins when he was manager of the Mets. But that finger took a serious hit. 10 stitches, broken. I had to get it stitched up by the Pirates doctor because the Reds doctor went home. So, Todd, I'm freaking out a little bit being back here, man.
So here's what you do. Simple. You go to that same spot before the game. You put your hand where it was on the railing. And you say, Lord, just please save this hand. That's all. And you say a little prayer to yourself. And guess what? You're going to look around and be like, all right, I'm back. I'm good. All right?
Well, it wasn't on the railing. It was on the mic. And Fox asked me which side of the field I wanted to be on. Now, I was on the third base side of the field that day. You pulled the ball, vicious. It must have been 150 miles an hour.
Probably.
And I asked to go on the other side of the field this time.
Hey, enjoy your game on Fox tonight, 7:10, Reds-Dodgers.
Tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Excuse me.
Yeah.
It's going to be a really good matchup. So enjoy that. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. I'm watching and listening just to make sure Ken is okay. And yes, I like how he brought up the exit velo too, because yes, we can bring up the exit velo. Todd scorched the ball. Yes, Kratz?
You're on the first base side now. You know Shohei hits some foul balls, right? I mean, let's get you need a better scouting director, okay? Like we need full catcher's gear.
Eric, what I need to do is not put my head down. We can start there, and then hopefully injury will be avoided.
Such a millennial. Always on your phone.
Bodyguard with a glove would help too. Ken, good luck. We'll be watching on Saturday on Fox. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate you. Ken Rosenthal, FT Senior Insider and host of Fair Territory, which was running on Monday and Thursday this week. Thursday was live, which was yesterday with Alana Rizzo. Episode is out wherever you get your pods and on YouTube. Check it out. They talked about O'Neal Cruz. They talked about the exit velocity combo, more on the Yankees, and just answering a ton of questions.
Hey, everybody. Be sure to like and subscribe for more content.
We're back here every weekday, all year long, so do not miss an episode.
The videos are coming in all day. Here's another video you might enjoy.
Baseball the way it should be covered.